Hey, Jason, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. The wall looks good behind you. Last time we did this, it was like bare drywall with like an outline of a water heater on it or some shit. Look at
Yeah,
that.
so I made shelves out of the old water heater place, and I hung my guitars up and
Oh,
painted
Was
it. Looks a little better.
is that a little pantry now there? Is that your recording gear or what is that stuff back
No,
there?
yeah, it's just water bottles and coffee and all the
Enough
good
top
stuff.
enough top ramen to get through the next apocalypse.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
So should we be side by side? I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think so. People want to see you more than me, so when I'm talking, they'll want to watch your reactions.
I'll try not to overreact like I'm Don Lemon or something like that. Oh my, I was over it. So hey, everybody out there. Jason and I haven't seen each other in a while, so we're just catching up here. But welcome to the Blue Collar Podcast as it exists. I was watching Don Lemon last night. And I was over at Jackie's house, and we were eating dinner. And we were watching some like local channel or something like that. And I said, let's look at CNN. I haven't seen CNN in a really long time. Oh my God, it was Don Lemon was just starting. What a ham actor that guy is. It looks like he's acting in some little theater production in his hometown.
Yeah.
They were going on and on. I thought the thing would be, we made bets as to what the topic would be before we went up and before it started. And I said, it's going to be all about not filling the stadium.
Yeah.
But it was all about the first like 10 minutes was all about him having said Kung flu, the
Oh no.
racist statement. Like you did a thing about that.
Right.
You ever think how funny it is that they've managed to convince people to assume that that this term Kung flu is racist?
Right. Well, they've convinced all kinds of things, right? It's not just this one word, but you notice it's always a word that some conservative or some Republican is using. They find a way to do it. But, like I said in my last video, Dick Durbin used the word token to describe Tim Scott's legislation, and they're the purveyors of the PC culture. So they know what they're doing, right? Right. When a conservative says something, a lot of times it's like, man, that's just how I talk. Somebody the other day said, you keep saying black people. You don't say African American. And I said, yeah, that's how I use it. They're black people. I'm a white person. He's a black person, my friend I was talking about. But yeah, you should say African American. It's like, yeah.
You mean like African American lives matter?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, change that.
Like African American lives power,
Yeah.
I mean, black is a word. I try to mix it up, but if you were to write African American every time that you refer to them or say that, I ain't got time for all these extra syllables. I got shit to do.
I'm trying to say something here.
I'm trying to say one syllable and get on with what I'm doing. I'm busy.
Yeah. I'm gonna start using European American every time I refer to white people. I think that'll work better.
Yeah, I'm working on a piece right now. You guys will be watching for it. It's called Black Privilege.
Oh yeah, you're gonna go along with your white privilege, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I didn't expect it. I don't know if you guys out there in TV land have seen that video that we did about a year and like a half ago, something like that. Called white privilege, white male privilege. It started blowing up a few days ago, and I think it's got over 700,000 views now. I looked at it this morning. It's
always nice when something comes back and comes back and comes back. That one, like you had a few really good ones that just keep giving, right?
Yeah,
they get found again, and somebody must share it on some website, and they go like, "Oh man, this guy's laying it out right."
It's something to do with the perennial nature of things. Like we get stuck, and just to share with you guys out there in the audience that YouTubers talk about the grind. You know how you've got to keep making stuff up all the time. I'm looking at Jason, which is probably the wrong way to be looking, because if I seem to be looking off camera, I'm looking at Jason on my monitor. which is not where the camera is, right? So if I seem to be staring off into space unexpectedly, that's just because I'm doing that. But you have to keep coming up with stuff. And because of the nature of what we do here at Blue Collar Logic, we have to try to keep on top of the news cycle in some way. It has to be pertinent, or you guys aren't going to be that interested in it for the most part. And it's absolutely impossible lately to keep up with things. I'll sit down and one day I'll be working on something that I think is really interesting, and I'll write it and I'll rewrite it. And then maybe right before I start filming it, I think I'll check the news. It's no longer pertinent. Something completely different is going on. And, it's like hours and hours of work are just gone.
Well, I get out of my work truck and I start the day, some news thing happens, and I'm driving around. I'm like, oh man, I don't hear anybody talking about this part of it. I need to bring that up.
Right, right.
And then by the time the night comes, it's no longer
It's not even a
important. They're
topic.
now talking about this next thing. And I'm like, oh, that's just going to fall on deaf ears. And I didn't even get a chance to write yet.
There just must be mass psychosis going on all throughout the news business, where people, I guess they have staffs of people, like say Tucker Carlson or something like that. They must have staffs of people who are getting all these video clips together and doing all this stuff, all these producers. And then, Carlson's got to come in and then work on the stuff that's already been written and make sure that it's the stuff he's interested in. And it sounds like it's in his voice. And then somehow to get on air, but to do that every blessed night,
Yeah.
and his stuff is long.
Yeah. But how many writers do you think he has?
Oh, well, I don't know, but he has to have he has to have writers. That's all I know.
Absolutely.
It's impossible for him. He'd have no family life. He'd have nothing else going on in his life in order to do all that. So he probably has a couple of researchers. I would imagine that there's some kind of phone calls that go on during the day as they're getting ready to make the thing that says, okay, this is really what what I want to talk about. I want this angle to happen. And he probably has somebody that drafts up a little bit for him, and then he gets there and they must spend a couple hours pulling it all together. I'm sure that it's hard work.
I bet they're throwing stuff away too. I bet they get there and they go, oh, you know what? We were going to do this, and we're not going to worry about those. A and B are going to be what's going to take up this whole thing. And I got a good angle. And, what you said, Bill, I think that's a really good point. We want to put that in the second paragraph and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, let me just ask you, how loud does my voice sound to you?
It sounds good to me.
You can hear it well, but I guess there's no way of us really knowing. I guess we're counting on Zoom to sort of
I think so.
To sort of moderate it out.
Speakers, I have my speakers up, so I hope we're not getting some kind of feedback, but we didn't last time.
No, what happens is the Zoom software, sorry, I didn't mean to take you off your point there or talking about Tucker, but I guess with the Zoom software, it cuts off the uptake through your mic when you're listening through your speakers, because I'm listening through my speakers as well.
It's weird because I see so many people even on TV now, they got their headphones on and so on.
Doesn't apply to Zoom really.
I mean, we have a minimalist setup here.
Yeah.
And it looks stupid with the earphones. How come, CNN isn't interviewing some expert, and that expert have a decent setup?
Yeah, or people have those little things dangling with the little tiny microphone that's right here. And they bought it for $8 at Walmart, and that's their.
It just comes with their iPhone. It just comes with their iPhone.
Well, we both know we both went through this thing when the crash hit, and whoever it was that saw this whole thing coming, a lot of people bought up all the webcams. And we only owned, between Jason and I, we owned this one webcam, and I had taken it home down here because I was starting to use it here at the dojo. I've got it up here right now, except it died about 3 days into the shutdown. And Jason went out and bought one. I think you paid about 5 times what the thing is worth.
That's right. I ordered it from some private seller on Amazon who boosted it up 300% or something.
Yeah, and I tried to buy one, and I went and looked at I found a friend that had one, and I went out to his place, and I don't know where it was, Reseda, I think it was, and we were all masked up and shit. He's an older dude, and he pulled it out. He was in an apartment. I'd never met him before. He was a friend of a friend on Facebook, and I bought the thing for him for 40 bucks, and I came home and put it in. It was an older model of Logitech. Oh, it was so grainy. It was horrible.
Yeah.
So I didn't try to get my money back. I just, he was trying to cut me a deal, and so I thanked him and just kept the thing as a spare. So if you guys ever see suddenly there's a really grainy video, I'm using that older model. But
This is Dave coming from 1988.
but finally I had to break down and go online and buy one. I had it shipped straight from China. Logitech, fortunately, it seems to be the real deal, and
I think they're made there.
it cost me about 3 times what I expected to pay for it.
Yeah.
If what I would expect. Yeah. So we're doing. Oh, hang on, moment of product placement here.
I don't even know what that says. What does that
Never
say?
drink anything larger than your head.
That's banned in some cities across America. You know that, right?
For me, there is nothing bigger than my head.
You're such a rebel. You're such a rebel drinking something that's banned throughout the United States.
This is a shout out to my Arizona people. Only people from Arizona will know what this means. It's Terrible Herbst there down in the river, on the Colorado River there in Parker. Terrible Herbst is a sort of a gas station type thing. I don't know where it came from. It's like an outlaw named Terrible Herbst, but it's a gas station and convenience store.
That's funny.
So it's Arizonans will know about it probably. So what else were we going to talk about?
I don't know, but what I want to talk about, 2 things. I want to talk about Chicago with that little girl getting shot in the neck. She's showing her mom a dance move. She gets shot in the neck by a drive-by. Have you heard any Black Lives Matter talk about that?
No, of course not. Yeah, and that's in my new piece. I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah, that just makes me so angry. They don't even have the decency to just mention it. We got to at least, try ourselves to quit with the gun violence and the violence in general. They don't say anything about it. They just let it go. And I mean, the thought of this little girl showing her mom a dance move at 8 o'clock at night or whatever it was, getting shot in the neck and then bleeding out, reaching for her mom. I mean, that is
well, now, how old was that little girl?
13.
13. I had heard conflicting reports. I heard that 5 of the 14 people that died in the 104 shootings or whatever it was, that 5 of them were children. There were two little boys. Yeah. There were 2 boys that were playing together or something like that, and they both got shot and they both died. And then there was that little toddler who was with her daddy, and
he got shot in the car or something in the back seat of the car or something.
And he tried to get her to a hospital, and she died too. I mean, this stuff goes on all the time. And that was, the ironic thing about this, Jason, and maybe it's something that you might want to turn into a video, is it was Father's Day weekend. Mm-hmm. Father's Day. So a lot of fatherless boys are out shooting up the town on Father's Day.
Yeah.
It was ironic because
that, yeah.
It was ironic because
Father's Day weekend, right? A fatherless Father's Day weekend.
Right. It was ironic because I got into a dust up with my son. And my birthday, for those of you that absolutely most of you don't know, my birthday was Saturday and Father's Day was Sunday. And it's always been like neck and neck, of course. Those dates fall very close to each other. So generally, as I was growing up, my birthday sort of got subsumed into Father's Day. If there was any kind of party or celebration, it would be Father's Day. And, oh, yeah, Dave's birthday, too. We'll give Dave a cupcake over here on the corner while we praise our father, because it was a much bigger thing than some damn kid having a birthday. So I kind of got used to not really having a real birthday. Yeah. So but this year, the kids invited me. And I went over there and hung out with them, and they set up. My son's into the social distancing, and so we were all set up in the front yard, and we tried to avoid politics, but you can't do it. And my son's an academic for 10 years, and of course, you know what that turns into. And we were talking about this issue about Black Lives Matter and things like that. We were having really good discussion about policing, and I said, but it has to be understood that there is a cultural element to this. There is higher criminality, and it has to do with the breakdown in the Black family. And that was the trigger. That was the trigger. Suddenly he was, that's the thing you cannot say. That's the third rail somehow. Yeah. And we ended up getting in a big argument, and it was a big FU moment, and I had to leave, and a nasty letter from his wife the next morning saying I'm out of their lives forever. And, of course it'll blow up. it'll blow over. My son's a really good guy, but you know, if you are surrounded on all sides in academia, as he's been for 10 years, while you're growing up from 18 to 30, whatever it is,
Yeah.
um, you're going to be influenced by all of these assumptions.
Hmm.
And, you know, the assumption that, and he had brought this up too in the conversation about how black people, they have this problem of getting pulled over constantly while they're driving while black. And he was telling about a friend of his who they would work together when he was working his way through college. My son, he worked in this party store, right, you know, where they party rents and stuff like that. And the kid that he worked with was a black kid, and he had told my son, um, they were talking about going somewhere in Glendora, which is sort of inland empire. For those of you don't know, it's sort of inland from here. Um, and the kid had said, "Oh, I don't drive through Glendora because every time I do, I get pulled over." And so, I mean, if you just stop and think for a minute, and I said to my son, I go, "Well, obviously the kid's exaggerating.
Hmm.
Like,
Of course.
I drive through. So just like if you break that down, and you hear this all the time from people. Every time I drive, I got pulled over, or I got pulled over so many times. You know, it's always an exaggeration. It always is, because imagine if I leave here and I go out and go out to Lake Avenue and I drive down out of Altadena into Pasadena. Now I'm going to say I'm going to drive through Pasadena. Now that'll take me 20 minutes to drive through Pasadena. I might possibly see one cop, but I might drive through there 2 more days and not see any cops. Now, if I see one cop, that cop would have to look at the face of every single driver if, in fact, he's going to properly be targeting all blacks.
Right.
So, so that every black person that drives through, all cops would be on the lookout for them. Forget about this domestic violence thing. Forget about going and doing any other policing whatsoever. You have to constantly be scanning for black people. That means you've got to look at every face, because he'd have to have looked at my face and seen that it was white in order to know that he doesn't have to pull me over.
Right.
You know, so it's bullshit. What happens, I think, in those instances, because black people do get pulled over more often, is statistically, I think it's a thing called driving while nervous.
Hmm.
And there have been times that I've gotten pulled over, and I used to drive under the influence fairly frequently, and I would overcompensate, right? So you
Hmm.
overcompensate. You see a police officer and you start driving slower.
Yeah.
So and if you
10 and 2, you're 10 and 2 straight
yeah,
ahead.
and a cop can tell. The last time I got pulled over, ironically, was leaving my son's wedding. I was sober as a judge, and there was this twisty road going down. It was out in Claremont, or it was out in Cal Poly Pomona,
Yeah, I
and
know
there's
the area.
this. They have this little, kind of a festivity place up on the top of this hill, and the road down is this curvy, twisty road. Well, as I was walking out of my son's wedding, I noticed a cop car was parked in the shadows outside, waiting to bust drunk people leaving a wedding, right?
Sure.
And so I went and got in my van, and I went to go down the hill, and he made the assumption this guy's leaving a wedding. He's probably at least somewhat drunk. I'm going to
Right.
follow him. So he follows me down this twisty hill. He got a little bit up on my butt, maybe not too much, but I knew he was there, and he knew it. So I'm looking in the mirror. I'm being
Yeah.
extra careful. He pulls me over at the bottom of the hill. And again, I'm sober as a judge. All the papers are fine. I didn't break any laws. And I go, "Dude, why did you pull me over?" And he goes, "You were driving nervous." So I
Right.
thought, yeah, I was. I was acting unnatural because I was
Right.
afraid a cop was going to pull me over. Now, if everybody has told you that cops will pull you over, and if they pull you over, you're liable to end up dead, you're going to be really nervous when you see a cop pull in behind you.
Right. But
I think
also
it has to do with that.
a lot of people are having a couple drinks and then driving and going like, "Oh no, I had a couple drinks. There's a cop." That a lot of
Exactly.
people are smoking weed. A lot of people got stuff on them, right? They got a reason to be scared to be pulled over. And I think that's a big part of it.
Right. Virtually every 19-year-old male has something he doesn't want a cop to know about, whether it's in
Right.
his car or in his recent history, or,
Yeah.
might possibly have a warrant. Did I take care of that other ticket? There's all kinds of reasons to
I want
be
to go back to what you said
nervous.
about Glendora, but this kid says every time I drive through Glendora, I get pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
That means every black person who drives through Glendora
Gets pulled over.
pulled over.
Exactly.
The manpower to do such an
Right.
operation would just be, does that mean no Hispanics get pulled over? Does that mean no whites get pulled over?
Everybody else.
Everybody else got a free ride. You know, we're just driving through there speeding. We're all doing drugs in the car. We're all drinking. Hey, cop, how you doing? And
It's
the black guy comes through
statistically
there, just a
impossible.
normal guy. Oh, he gets
Right.
pulled. Yeah,
It's statistically impossible that any one black person who's innocent would be pulled over every time, because that would mean, like you say, every black person would have to get
right.
pulled over every
Which is
time.
just impossible.
And you drive through Glendora, and all you would see is cops rousting black people. It's like, oh, there's two on this block.
Right.
Last block had 3. You know,
That's right.
there wouldn't be any time to do any other policing. So, but
When I was in, I guess 19, maybe 20 years old, one summer I worked a job. I lived in a small town in Kentucky. I worked a job. It was a stupid job. It was sticking microfiche into a computer and then making them computer files all night long. It was just a stupid job to get some money. And working the night shift, I stayed up all night. So even on the weekends,
Mhm.
me and a buddy who worked there, we'd play music and we'd stay up all night. And we'd go to Subway at the truck stop or something like that was open 24 hours and get something to eat at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I'm driving through a small town with me, two guys. Almost every time a cop saw us, they pulled us over because there was nobody out.
Right,
So
exactly.
they pulled you over and said, "Hey, what are you out doing tonight?" And you'd be like, "Oh, I'm not doing anything. I work the night shift, and so we're up at night now." Even on my lunch break, I got pulled over. That summer, I got pulled over 6 or 7 times, and I got
Right.
frustrated. I went and told my dad. I said, "This is BS. Like, you can't be doing this for no reason." And my dad said, "Well, son, most people that are out 3 o'clock in the morning are
We're up to
drinking."
no good.
Yeah.
Right.
So they want to check. They want to check. I had tinted windows in my car. I had a big stereo system. That was what was cool in the 90s. So I was probably playing loud music, dark tinted windows in my cars. The cops like, "Yeah, these guys are, out doing drugs."
You
You
have
know?
to assume it. We have to remember that what police are tasked to do is crime prevention. So,
Prevention. That's
so
the
if they
word,
see
prevention.
right, so if they see you out driving around and there have been a relative number of burglaries in the area, and you're the only guy driving by, and if you in any way are close to the description, and if you happen to be of a dark complexion, you're going to be more often closer to the description because crime is higher with people with dark skin for a number of reasons that have nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I remember when, like, sometimes I've accused you of looking like an Islamic terrorist. I mean it. I mean it with love. But every now and then, I go, that dude, if it was just after 9/11, it was getting on a plane, I would check him out just in case.
That's funny,
Especially if
because
you were at your most tan. Right now, you're not at your most tan.
when
I haven't
when
left
I
the
did the
house in
Europe
months. But
after college, when I did the Europe baseball thing, I went 5 years in a row to Europe. After the first year, because I was doing it again the next year,
uh-huh.
every 4 years after that, I got pulled aside. They took out all the stuff out of my bags every time because why is this guy traveling so much? Is he going
Right,
over
right.
there and learning, and maybe it's because, in the summers I get a little darker. Well, I don't now because I had skin cancer. So I have to I have to put stuff on my face now or I'm going to end up, not doing too well. But before I played baseball, I would get pretty dark.
Right, and it used to crack me up when we'd just been through that thing. And anybody who thinks that this PC thing just started, not a bit. This has been going
That's
on
right.
for a long time. And I remember after 9/11 when we had to do that, we started having the greater security at the airports, and the police would, or, what do they call those people? Uh, I I forget what they're called. The people who are,
Airport security.
yeah, the people who are specifically there to check and see if anybody has a bomb in their shampoo. Uh, but they would be, every now and then they'd have to frisk a little old lady, or a 5-year-old girl. They'd have to go through her stuff, and she's got
Yeah.
blonde hair, and they're on their way to Norway. Just in case, because they don't want the appearance that they're racially profiling anybody. If I was going on a plane and a guy and a bunch of guys who looked just like me had just recently, flown uh, airplanes into buildings, I would go, that's really a bummer for me. But
Right.
I don't want the rest of these people to be lives to be risked because the police are too PC to be racially profiling anybody. I
Right.
mean, sometimes you just go, well, God, this is going to be a drag for me because I kind of look like the killer. When I first grew my beard, and I was wearing aviator shades a lot. This was years ago, and I remember showing up once somewhere, and somebody goes, "Man, you just look exactly like the Unabomber."
I was thinking that. I was
Right?
thinking that.
And I did look like the Unabomber at the time,
Yeah.
because he was in the news. I mean, I'm not the Unabomber, but
Right.
if you looked at the picture that they were floating around at the time, I did look kind of like the Unabomber. If somebody had pulled me over when I was wearing my aviator shades and I had a hoodie on and said, "Dude, we got to take a look at you. You look just like this guy we're looking for." I was said, maybe I should shave my beard. Maybe it's time for me to get a different pair of shades that don't look exactly like the Unabomber.
Sure. I
So
mean,
life is complicated.
we pretend that we can turn off our brains and not. A good example is if I'm walking down the street and I see a group of black males looking like they're shooting a hip hop video, but there's no cameras, I might go, you know what? I'm going to go across the other side of the street. Right.
Right.
If I see a group of black males carrying Bibles and wearing suits, I don't even think about it.
Right.
And that's the same whether they're white, they're Hispanic, they're black, it doesn't matter. You roll up and everybody's got tattoos on their heads and they're white. I go, you know what? I don't fit in that group. I'm not sure what's going on over there. I might walk the other way. But our brains are made that way so that we know how to protect ourselves and what to do. You don't you like you're saying, you see a 90-year-old woman, and it's a 90-year-old woman whether no matter what race she is, and you
Yeah.
don't think, well, this lady's got a bomb, right?
Right. Exactly.
And it doesn't matter the race. And so it's not about race, it's about so many other factors, and race happens to be one of them. Color, the way you
Right.
look, the way you carry yourself, are you nervous? All those things are all factors that our brains pick up on, and we should do that.
Right. And this is why I hit so hard over and over again in my black related videos on the idea that we have one culture. I did a thing called uh, um, black culture equals segregation. And it
Mhm.
absolutely does. If you are told that because you are black, you should have a separate culture, that will ennoble you. So it'll give you something to be proud of, that you have something that white people can't have. So you're going to have this culture. So you're going to develop all these ways of saying things and all these ways of doing things, and you're going to avoid sounding like a typical white person because you don't want to be seen as less black among your own people because you're working on forming this individualized culture that is different than white culture. After a while, what you got is you got a separate culture.
Mhm.
And that is what people respond to when they're afraid of people. Like we're living in the wild. We're a band of hunter gatherers, right? If we suddenly, we got up to a crest of a hill, we're out there looking for grubs to eat or whatever, and you look down in the valley, and there's a bunch of people now camped there that weren't here last time we were here, and they're wearing clothes and colors that we don't know, and they've got their hair cut in a certain way we've never seen before. They're doing strange and ominous things. We would sneak back down the hill and avoid coming back there. And if we saw them again, we would arm ourselves until we
Right.
were certain that they were safe, because it's better to kill them in the wild or at least intimidate them away than it is to take the chance that they kill you.
Mhm.
So that's why people examine each other for a while, and then they look and they go, okay, well, geez, they are doing just about the same things we do. Maybe the hair and all that stuff maybe that's not war paint. Maybe that's just fashion. So then you go, okay, well, that's all right. But I told the story a long time ago about the group a group of Hispanic kids that pulled into the gas station down the corner where I get my big gulp filled, and they they came in. They had the loud music. It was a car was riding kind of low in the back. There were three guys in the back and two guys in the front. They all had like neck tattoos. They were, you know, they were totally dressed like cholos, you know? And
Sure.
of course I was nervous about those guys, but I wasn't nervous because they were Hispanic. I was nervous because they were cholos.
Mhm.
They had cultural badges saying that we're part of the badass Hispanic crowd.
Mhm.
We're part of the
Yeah.
crowd that shoots each other. And so I mean they were sending the signs. I got my do rag on right now. I think this makes me a crip, or am I a blood today? I'm not sure.
The wife and
Um,
I were at a gas station once getting some, I don't know, water bottles or whatever it is you get at a gas station. And there's some guy in there, like you're saying, he was neck tattoo. He had tattoos on his head. He kind of looks at us, and I'm just like, oh, let's kind of stay over here. We'll wait till he goes and checks out.
mhm.
He goes and checks out, and he turns around at the door and he goes, I'd hit that, talking about my wife. Now, I ain't the guy that's going to go, let's go chase down this gangbanger and see, let's teach him a lesson. I'm not that tough. So I said, I just said, oh, just wait right here. Let's let that guy get out of here. Um, from the very beginning, it was never him being Hispanic that
Right.
bothered me. It was the way he carried himself, the way the tattoos, the way he was acting. I mean, my wife's Hispanic. Obviously, it wasn't the Hispanic part that bothered me.
Right.
But yeah, we got to get out of this. It's going to destroy us.
And to take that just a
Thinking this
step
way.
further, if you were a Hispanic guy without a father, and you or a black guy without a father, or a white guy without a father, just say
Yeah,
if you were a kid without a father and you had a bunch of other kids in the car without fathers, and somebody said that about your girlfriend or your wife or whatever, you would have to get out and challenge him to a fight,
that's right.
because you couldn't not do that in front of your bros. Because when you don't have a father figure in your life, boys find each other, and then it's Lord of the Flies, and then
Right.
they are jostling for some position of authority. And all these things that they do, hanging over a freeway off ramp and writing their name upside down in the dark. It's a strange act of courage to
Yeah.
do that thing. And you mark a thing. Wow, did you see that? Chewy got his name on, hanging above the Pasadena freeway. How would he do that? That dude's badass.
That guy's crazy.
You have to display your courage all the time, because your gang is your male family, and
Right.
you can't refer your masculinity to your father's masculinity and measure it against him and challenge him from time to time. And you and your dad go to words once in a while, like my son did to me. He in a sense, he's telling his dad to F off, and it'll roll over. It's one of the
Yeah.
things that a son and his father go through once in a while,
Well,
right?
you don't impress the guys with maturity, right?
No.
I played sports my whole life,
Right.
and you never like in college we'd have some parties or whatever, and it was somebody from a football team would say get an argument with a guy from the baseball team, and then the baseball team would stand up and the football team or whoever, this fraternity and so on. There were very few guys going, hey guys, come on, let's just have a good time. Everybody wanted to prove that they're the toughest, they're the best, they're whatever.
Exactly.
And that's what young men do. And if you had never had anyone telling you like, son, come on, have some understanding.
Right. Right.
That guy grew up in a bad neighborhood, this is how he acts. What are you going to do, go out there and challenge him, and maybe he kills you stabs you to death with some knife he has on him? Of course not. You're just going to be a mature person and say, oh, that poor guy, I mean, he's probably had a rough life, and I hope we never cross paths again.
Yeah, and hey, it's kind of humiliating to be, like in a situation where the guy's, telling you about your girlfriend or whatever like that. Okay, that was kind of humiliating. It would be nice if my girlfriend didn't have to see me not getting violent with a guy. But I'd rather have the life I have with her and my friends and my job and my family and not
That's
be
right.
dead than to have to prove myself a hero, which could
Right.
end very badly, And so,
But you're
yeah,
not a hero. But you're not a hero. You're now just some guy in a fist fight at a gas station over some stupid reason.
right.
you
But
know,
if you happen to belong to that fatherless culture,
that's right.
that's what you have to do. You
Because you
have
have to
to do,
impress with that. That's right. You got to impress these other
yeah,
young men, and that's the only thing that's going to impress them. They're not going to be impressed by you being calm, cool, and collected and saying, yeah, you know what? I got some understanding about this situation. No, that's not going to work.
And in rare occasions that will work if the other guys are not that into the fight thing either. Like maybe, there's only one of them that really is driving this thing, and the rest of them are kind of just going along, play acting.
Yeah,
Sometimes, you can bump chests and you can, do that thing and get away from it. I'm glad that I'm not in those years anymore. I certainly gotten in plenty of fist fights, and I'm telling you, it wasn't my best thing. I wasn't,
yeah,
I wasn't a big, strong kid, but I hung around with a lot of kids who, whose fathers were not present.
sure.
And I remember my parents when I was growing up saying, "Well, Dennis and Russ come from broken homes, right? Is that Steve guy? Does he have a dad? That kind of stuff." And because it was common knowledge back then that if you come from a broken home and you don't have the presence of a father in your life, you're more likely to be headed for trouble. You're more
Right.
likely to do it. Everybody knew this. There was no racial component to that knowledge, and that people like my poor son right now, who's not able to think for himself because it's too dangerous socially for him. He's not allowed to admit that to himself, that these rules apply not only to white kids, they apply to black kids.
Hmm.
And it is actually racist to think otherwise, to think that, oh, if what works for white people won't work for black people,
Right.
like discipline in school, like being forced against their will to speak proper English. That's an act of love toward them, to try to prepare them for the real world that's coming, so they
Sure.
won't walk into a job interview and be speaking poorly and saying, "Well, I'm glad you asked me here to talk about getting that job," and you know there's a signal right now that this kid's not going to speak proper English to our clients here. We'd love, he's
Right.
hardworking kid, we like him, but he doesn't have the training to go mainstream and to do all these carve outs and these set asides, all this phony black privilege uh, is really the racist thing. It's
Well, I
really
think
saying
Walter
the
Williams. Walter Williams put out. I believe it was Walter Williams. Might have been Shelby Steele the other day, but he was talking about in Baltimore how so many kids are graduating without being able to read at grade level, do math, and so on.
right,
Now, what does that do if you're a person hiring people and these two people, one's Hispanic, one's white, or three people, one's black? We know that they all have a high school diploma, but the black guy probably doesn't read as good as the white guy. He probably doesn't speak as good as the white guy. They both have graduated, but we know that the levels that they're graduating at is lower.
yes.
And it's nothing to do with racism. It's to do with the expectations of the low expectations. Oh, they have it rough in that neighborhood. Let's just get them on through high school so they can
Right.
have a better life. No, if you don't learn anything in high school, what's the point in even going?
And then all of the colleges are so obsessed with making a student body that looks like America, that is the color of America, that they bring these kids in who are poorly prepared and shouldn't have been graduated out of their high schools. And they might be perfectly bright kids, and oftentimes they are bright kids.
Mhm.
Uh, and and they may have even been near the top of their class in high school, but it might not have been a very high standard they were performing to. And they get in with all these kids who came out of private schools, and then they got to go to the best preparatory schools, and then they head off to Princeton or Yale. And I
That
think
happened to a
what
great friend of
happens,
mine.
and I think this is the thing that happens, and that I've never really heard anyone else talk about. I think that a lot of kids, when they're in college, they meet these black kids. And this is the first time they've ever met black kids. And these kids are not keeping up. And so in the back of their mind, they have this thought, maybe black people really aren't as smart as white people. I will never ever say this out loud. I will take this to my grave that I
Mhm.
ever had this thought. So they're not allowed to say, what a drag that you weren't prepared a little better for this, and you're
Right.
not going to do as well. You're a perfectly bright guy. They're not able to say that because that would blame their ideology. They can't blame the ideology. They're collectivists, and so they're left with this kind of a sneaking suspicion that, oh my God, even though we've given every advantage to these black kids, they're flunking out. Oh my God, we must attack racism all that much harder. And
Right.
so they create this, and so they accuse everybody else of being something that they, in their heart of hearts, are afraid that they are. They're afraid it's been revealed to them in some way that, oh my God, these people actually aren't the equal of white people. And you can see how you'd get that impression if you didn't know any black people, and then you go to college and the only people you know are poorly prepared black people who are therefore not doing as well in their studies.
Ami Horowitz did a good video about that, where he went to some Ivy League school, I believe, and he asked a bunch of white people if voter ID laws were racist.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes and he asks them, of course they're all, yeah, of course they're racist. Why? Well, black people just don't have the ability to get IDs like white
Oh, I
people
remember
do.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So all these black people or all these white people said this. They can't afford the internet. Like all these things.
Yeah, I know. Really?
Right. Then he goes to a black neighborhood and he says, "Do you have an ID?" And they're like, "Yeah, you have to have an ID. I got to have an ID to do all these things."
And he
But
asked one guy, "Do you know where's the DMV? Do you know where the DMV?" Yeah, it's
yeah,
3 blocks over
right down
down.
there. Exactly.
Yeah.
But those people they were interviewing were liberals. The white
Yes.
people were liberals, right?
Right.
They're accusing people like me and you, of being racist because we're willing to talk about whatever problems we're willing to talk about and be honest about it.
Right.
They're not being honest about it, because it must be the ideology, like you said, has to be furthered. And the only way they can do it is by getting more Democrats elected, and voter ID laws hurt, election chances, which I don't know that they
Right.
do.
But rank and file Democrats aren't thinking in these terms.
Mhm.
They're not tuned into the news all the time. And if they do watch the news, they don't go to separate sources and get the other side of it. So they believe that there is this secret cabal of mysterious white conservatives holding down black people in cities where a conservative hasn't held any sort of office, no judgeship, no police chief, no mayor, for literally decades, sometimes 6 or 7 decades. And
Yeah.
all of these things come out of all of these racial extravaganzas, which feature a person with a police record dying, and then all of the Sturm and Drang that goes after that, and all of the rioting and the looting. They're always in blue cities.
Mhm.
There isn't really an example otherwise, and people don't piece that simple thing together. Um,
Well,
and I'm not
they
sure.
can't piece it together because of all the noise being told to them from CNN, from MSNBC,
Right.
from their politicians, from their elected officials. Like, if everybody is saying those things to you, eventually you think, maybe that's true."
Right, exactly. I mean, and then they do this other thing where white people come out and they say, well, all white people are in some way racist.
Mhm.
And it seems to be they're confessing for you. They're not confessing for themselves. What they mean to say is all white people, except the ones brave enough to say that all white people are in some way racist, are racist.
Right.
But I'm one of the brave ones saying it. So
Right.
and and then the black people will go, well, I better trust this person because this person's giving me the inside knowledge from inside the bubble of whiteness. And
Mhm.
so they come out and they do that bit of virtue signaling as if they're bringing the truth from all white people out into the world. And what are black people supposed to do? Not believe it? Of course they're going to some degree believe it, because they think that the minute they leave the room, we're all talking about it. Oh, thank God that N-word went, left. Now let's talk about connecting and having some golf games and networking. It's just this crazy thing that so they intentionally cripple the lives of black people in order to keep them under this spell
Yeah.
just for 13% of the electorate.
Yeah.
Yes, it
It's like
comes
that
down to that.
it's like that SNL skit with Eddie Murphy back in the day where he dresses up as a white guy.
White like
So
me.
he goes out on the town and he goes to buy a newspaper at the newspaper stand, and it's a white guy working there, and he puts his money on the counter. He's like, "I'll take one newspaper, please." And the guy hands him the newspaper and then slides his money back and says, "What are you doing, man?" And he's like, "What I've realized is white people just give each other everything when they're out on the town, when no black people are around." And
Right,
he's making fun of that thought right there. He's making fun of people
right.
pretending that, one thing that bothers me is someone told me the other day about the Tony Timpa thing. We were talking about that. And he says, "Why aren't you angry that a white guy got treated that way?" And I say, I'm not angry yet. I don't think in the terms of a white guy got treated that way or a black guy got treated that way. When someone gets mistreated, I think that's terrible.
Yes.
That's it. I don't go, "Oh, that poor white guy. Man, what if my son or my daughter gets treated this badly?" No, I don't think that way, because what happened there in Dallas with Tony Timpa has nothing to do with me. I'm not going to get treated this way because we have the same skin color. And
Yes.
everybody's on the racial side of things. They're always using that race as that must be the reason, when more often than not that has nothing to do with it.
I think it probably almost never does.
Right.
And there is, of course, the occasion that it does. But I want to say one more thing, and then probably we should briefly talk about the upcoming election.
Mm.
But uh, now I think I've forgotten the one more thing I was going to say. Oh, no. The one thing is, when I was young and I was running around with the Vista Village gang, the guys that, the sort of poor white trash guys that I hung around with, we all, had cars, or enough of us did that we were always moving around. We got pulled over an awful lot. Oftentimes we had just got beer. We got pulled over around the first hour of nighttime on a Friday night and a Saturday night, like all the time, because they were trying to get us after we had just scored our beer. Everybody knew how you did that. You'd go and to a liquor store. Oftentimes we would come up here to Pasadena to a place called Summit Liquor, and the old black wino guys would be waiting for us, for Christ's sake. And then we give them a little money. They go in and get their white port and lemon. And we would, and they would, we'd buy them a bottle of wine, and they
Right.
would score us our stuff, and then we'd meet them back behind the building in the darkness and exchange our stuff. And so the police knew the game. They'd been boys once themselves, and so they try to pull us all over all the time. So it was the sheriff's substation in Temple City, California, that mainly took over, because we were in an unincorporated area where we ran around. And we knew the cops, and they knew us, and they knew which ones of us were the most trouble causers, and we knew that about them. We knew that about the police. There were some subset of hothead cops. I can remember one particular guy, and you'd get out of the car, and most of the sheriffs, they'd be sick to death of having to pull you over all the time to make sure you weren't on your way to, doing vandalism or something. But we'd all get over, and and they would sit us on the curb. They'd look through the car. They'd find whatever we had, and if they were going to search us personally, they'd have us lean up against the car. Well, there was always this one cop that would bounce you off the car, right? Because he was getting you on the car, but rather than just gently pushing you over there and then frisking you, he'd like throw you onto the car. And he
Sure.
was a hothead. There are some number of hothead cops, and maybe this Derek Chauvin was one of these hothead cops. So, I mean, you're never going to get perfect humans who, well, we pay them not to react in anger. I'm sorry, they're still humans. They still have a nervous system and things like
Right.
that, and a brain that can be stressed out. But maybe we could be a little bit more careful in making sure that we get rid of the hotheads.
Sure.
So I'm all for this community policing, where people get out there and that they're walking the neighborhoods a lot. They introduce themselves to kids and parents, and storekeepers and people like that, and everybody sort of knows them. Get into schools early, so the kids are 6 and 7 and 8 years old, and they're having positive experiences with police officers. All that stuff's good as gold, but it's not. You don't get all that stuff if you defund the police. You get all that stuff if you have more police, so that there are enough police to be doing community outreach while the other guys are chasing down the bail jumpers and things like that. So you got to do all that. And it's just very discouraging to see us going through another cycle, and we seem that much further away from an honest discussion of race, like I think you and I have on the channel.
Absolutely. There aren't anyone out there besides people on the right having an honest conversation about it, because the people on the left, for the most part, aren't worried about the problem. They're worried about getting elected. They're worried about pushing an ideology, and
Right.
and that's really, what we're up against.
Right. And YouTube, I like to be in the default setting of gratitude toward YouTube for the great platform that they've built and for affording us a way to make a living much of the time.
Yeah.
But when we touch any of these things like race relations, even though there's never anything we do that could be interpreted really as racist in any way, they will demonetize us all the time. And they, not only that, they'll make sure that our videos are never seen by any liberals.
Yeah, no,
So,
I think that's a big part of it. It's not just that they're demonetizing it. I think a big part of it is that they're not giving it as an option to as many people as a bubblegum video, let's say, that is good.
exactly. And they do sequester. I don't see a lot of left-wing videos either. So they may be doing the same thing. They may be demonetizing left-wing videos for all we know. We're not interacting with those guys. And so, I mean, this is one of the reasons I need to find a way to be talking to more moderate Democrats and try to get them to realize that, we can have these conversations. What do you think about the very strange prospects for an election coming up? Is there going to even be an election?
Yeah, there'll be an election. But, and I hope there's debates, but we're in such a place now where we don't know. We can't trust the polls. We know from 2016, we can't trust the polling data, right? I think the PC culture has ruined us to the point where people are getting called by a random person saying, hey, what do you think about this? And they're willing to lie even to some person they don't even know, because they don't want to be seen as a person who can be lumped in with the white supremacist Trump supporters and so on. And
I think that's probably pretty true. Yeah.
yeah. And
so
then,
you suspect that there's much more Trump support than is being noticed in the polls?
Absolutely. I think so. And they were talking about this excitement, the whole AOC gloating about TikTok users saying they're going to go to the Trump rally and they weren't there, and only 6,000 people showed up. Joe Biden couldn't get 600 people to show up.
Was it that small? 6,000?
He was like 6,200 people out of a 19,000 seat stadium or something.
Huh.
But the thing is,
of course, if you and me had a 6,000 video,
right,
we'd say it's over, Jason.
Oh, it's 6,000 views.
Our run is over. My video really tanked. I only got.
But I mean, 8 million people were watching at home or whatever, right? But think about Joe Biden. So this was during a pandemic. For a week, the media saying, you can't go there, you're going to get sick, you're going to spread the disease.
Right.
And you got these people on TikTok trying to interfere and so on, and only 6,200 people showed up.
And I know that, right.
Joe Biden couldn't get that many if he promised everybody a case of beer. I mean.
Yes, and the thing is that he's not, that Trump is not running against himself 4 years ago. He's running against Joe Biden now.
Right.
So, and you're very right about the fact of the lingering fear of this pandemic, that there are a lot of people that would have gone to that thing and they just said, I really can't risk it because, we got my wife's dad living with us, I can't be bringing something home.
Right.
And as much as they would like to tell us that that all Trump supporters hate humanity, you know, we love our families just as much as anybody else does. And I think it was. I had this discussion with Jackie, and I said, "Is he blowing it by having this thing?" And I thought it would be nice if he had it outdoors in like a park or something. And then we thought, well, you couldn't do that because of security. It would be
Mhm.
too hard to secure the perimeter and all that stuff like that. And maybe an outdoor amphitheater or something like that would be good. Well, maybe there wasn't one available. Who knows? But we finally at the end of that discussion came down to it that it's really, in a sense, about Trump getting his mojo back. He has been so dragged out by this COVID thing month after month after month after month. And the dude is a people person. He recharges his batteries with interactions with people, and he has to get that part of him back that is a cheerleader for America,
Mhm.
because you know they sunk his economy, and now he's got to rebuild the damn thing.
Yeah, and he's got to. You got to remind everyone of everything, because we're
Yeah, that's a t-shirt. You got to
right.
remind everyone of everything.
You have to, because everybody's forgotten about that economy.
Already,
Everybody, this is
like it
it.
never existed.
That's right. And we're all this way. What have you done for me lately? Right. That's where that statement comes from.
Right.
We're all like this. And if he doesn't get out there and spread the message and say, here's what I was able to do in 3 years, if this pandemic wouldn't have happened, this is where we would be. And if he doesn't get a chance to say that and get out there and do that, then all you're going to hear is from the left is he's ruined this. He's ruined America. Look how far he's taken us in some wrong direction of, you know, of fascism and just some stupid out there stuff. But he has to get out there and say that stuff. I don't think it's so much that I don't think people who support Trump think, oh, well, he shouldn't be having rallies because, you know, it's going to get bad press and so on. I think they go, you know, people can decide themselves if they want to go out there and see him or not. Let the people do what they want to do, because that's who we are.
Right.
That's what we want to do.
And it would be a good idea not to, as you build up to it, say, yeah, we got 1 million people coming, or it's going to be lines down 2 miles down the road. It'd be a good idea not to overpromise. It's always a good thing to underpromise and overdeliver. And God bless the president, but that is not his strong point.
No, he's an overseller. That's for sure.
He's an overseller. You
No
know,
doubt about it.
he throws out the highball figure. You
Yeah.
know, that's the way the guy's wired. So yeah, but I think a good way to approach his advertising would be to cherry pick all kinds of things that well-placed leftist people, the type that liberals see on CNN all the time, were saying about their predictions about what he would do. Because I remember so many people, I even gathered some of them on Facebook. I was holding them in a sort of Donald Trump file, you know, to see, and they were certain that he would get us into a war. They were certain that he would crash the economy. They were certain that his administration would turn into an authoritarian nightmare. He would round up gays and put them in concentration camps. He would everything would be set back. And if you were to just put all that stuff up and then put it next to a legislation that he made a legislation to, the first historic legislation to make sure that blacks are not being incarcerated at higher rates than white people, that sort of thing, put it alongside something that he actually did, and just say, can you really trust these people in their predictions for the next 4 years?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
that's good.
Just, just kind of quiet things, not a lot of flash, and then just a picture of Donald Trump looking majestic. Always end with that. Or looking humble.
A lot of gold.
I don't
do they have those pictures?
Yeah.
I'm not sure they have humble pictures of Trump. And I don't mean that in a mean way, But, you know, he's from a world where I'm the man. That's it. Right.
Right.
And that's how he does his stuff. But there's a commercial I hear on talk radio occasionally where they talk about Christians weren't for Trump at the beginning. We picked Ted Cruz, or we picked all kinds of other
Right. Right.
people. We didn't pick him because we thought, he's never going to stand up for abortion rights. He's never going to stand up for the Bible. He's not, and he's been so good at it. And that's one of
Right.
the main reasons why the left hate him so much.
Exactly. You know, they don't hate him because he did a bunch of things he didn't say he was going to do. They hate him because he did do the things that he said he was going to do, and every other thing that I mean, for people who live in such opposition to human nature as the left does. And I say this as a guy that was over on the left for many years, and the embarrassment will never leave me entirely. But nor will the razzing I get in the comments section ever leave me entirely. But it didn't used to be that way. When I first came out of high school and went off to live on a commune, it was like living in a tribal band. The guys were guys. The women were wearing flowered sundresses and baking bread in the afternoon, while the guys were outside building a shed or cooking a pig in the ground or something like that. It was the guys had long hair, but in no way were they pussies.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the kind of people that were anti-establishment back then. And at some point, that's why I'm always so friendly toward hippies in my things. I want to have a set aside for hippies because hippies are not leftists. Hippies got co-opted by leftists. The
Right.
people that we're bothered by are these, like Jordan Peterson always calls them, the postmodernists. These are the people. It's the postmodernists who took over the women's rights movement. They took over the civil rights movement. There was nothing noxious about the civil rights movement when it was run by Martin Luther King and all those other respectable gentlemen wearing suits.
That's right.
There was nothing not respectable about that. I know that, Dr. King was not a saint, but what man is? But there was nothing that they were talking about that was Marxist or weird. It was just simply, let's erase this false barrier,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody then fan out into the culture. We're not looking for a new separatism where we become a black nation, like Black Lives Matter wants. This is all separatism, and it's all this breaking down of all the rules and standards and laws of society in order to make way for this new Marxist world that they
like hippies,
think.
like you're talking about hippies, a lot of liberals that are true liberals,
Mhm.
they now have to vote for Marxism.
They do.
They don't want to be a Republican, if they don't want to vote for Donald Trump, if they don't want to think about the issue, when really they're not that far left, but they're stuck, right?
Right.
They're stuck between being called a Trump racist or being a good person. That's how the left does it too. The left give you a choice. The choice is you can be an honorable person or you can be evil and go with them. And that's how they do it.
Yes.
I mean, Black Lives Matter, the name, the left are really good at this. Black Lives Matter is the name, but it has nothing to do with Black Lives Mattering, right?
Yes.
Planned Parenthood is a good name. We all want to Planned Parenthood. We should plan it. That's a smart thing to do. Planned Parenthood has nothing to do with planning parenthood. It has everything to do with stopping parenthood.
That's right.
And that's what they do. They name things. It's the way their bills are named too in Congress and so on. They're the opposite of what they want. They don't care about Black lives, like we talked about that 13-year-old girl that was killed. They care about an ideology. They care about tearing down the United States. That's why Jefferson Monument's got to come down. That's why Washington's got to come down. That's why every monument's got to come down. They're not going to stop at anything. It's going to be every monument. Jesus Christ now, the white Jesus Christ has to come down because that's oppression. Right.
Yes, it's horrifying what's going on right now and how much larger the crowds are this time of people that there's a merging now of
Mhm.
Antifa and other left-wing groups and Black Lives Matter. And it's a decentralized thing anyway. There's all kinds of chapters out there that can do whatever they want. But I mean, there's no doubt that the founders of Black Lives Matter are, Marxists. There's
Sure.
just no doubt about it. They're open about it. Did I say Black Lives Matter? Yeah. Um, so there's a merging of all of these other groups, and the thing that's holding them together is this postmodernist idea that
That's right.
that that all of society is based on oppression, and the only way out of it is to absolutely crush the society itself. And then from the ashes of that, from the rubble of that, will rise up a new egalitarian society. It's never worked anywhere else. That's what they did in Cuba, and it didn't work out that well. They did that in Cambodia and China and Russia, Venezuela. Everywhere it's been tried, it's the same theory. It's the same theory
Right.
that you have to somehow smash the patriarchy. But as Jordan Peterson is fond of saying, anytime you can't structure a society in a way other than trying to get people into the roles where they can really excel.
Mm.
Otherwise, you're squandering talent. So you get people into the roles where they really excel, and they naturally rise up because you have matched a job to a natural aptitude. And they're naturally going to rise up. They're going to be more productive. They're going to be more innovative, and they will end up making a little bit more money than the next guy down, and he then a little more money. Every time you do a functional society, it creates a hierarchy. And this doesn't matter if you're talking about 8 friends going camping together. By day 3, there's a leader.
Right.
Everywhere
It's
you go,
natural.
it naturally happens. And if you don't allow that, all that happens is you don't allow success.
Right. You allow chaos. You allow disorder.
You do.
Right. If you got no one saying, "Hey, I think over there is a good place to put the tents because it's higher ground, it's softer. That'd be a good place. No bears come up this side, or whatever it might be. We can protect ourselves." If you don't have that guy in the group, and everybody just doing what they want to do,
Right.
it's going to be chaos. And they want chaos right now. That's exactly what they're going for. And the leader of Chaz or Chop or whatever they want to call it in Seattle, she said it. She says if they don't dismantle the police, then we're going to tear everything down. That's what she
Yeah.
said.
But the problem is you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of actually tearing everything down
Right.
unless they dismantle the police. And I,
That's a good point.
the police are still standing between us and chaos, and it's about goddamn time that people started showing some resolve about saying, yes, we are into improving the police department and training it at whatever level is necessary so that we don't have any undue repeats of the George Floyd type thing. But but you need to superfund the police in order that they're not overwhelmed and
Mhm.
overstressed and therefore trigger happy. You've got to have lots of police so that there's plenty of them to go talk to kids in schools and explain to kids that we are here to help you. We want you to come running to us for protection. We don't want you running away from us from fear. And
Yep.
in order to get over these things, we're going to need to really invest in a good police department. And not only that, pay them more so that you attract people who do have other options in life to get a good pension. Get some people in there that are well adjusted. Most of them are. Most of them are wonderful people, but get rid of the ones that you don't need. And
A friend of mine's LAPD. He's he's the godfather. My wife's Catholic. He's the godfather, the Nino. I guess it's the Nino of my daughter. He we were talking one day at a restaurant. This has been a while back. And I said, how's it going, LAPD? How's it out there? And he said, "Oh man, I almost had to shoot this lady the other day." I said, "Oh, that would have sucked." And he goes, "She had a knife. She's about 12 feet away from me. She had holding the knife up, and she's telling me she's going to charge me. She's going to charge me." And I'm yelling at her, "Put that down, put that down. I don't want to have to shoot you. I don't want to have to shoot you." And he's like, just the thought of having to shoot somebody or killing somebody is terrible, on top of the fact that it's going to ruin my career.
of
It's going to
course,
ruin my psyche. It's going to ruin everything. Nobody wants to do it. Now, I say nobody.
Right.
There's a few people probably who do. But if you have a lot of cops like you're talking about, we hire a lot of cops. When
Right.
we have bad ones, we say, adios, my friend. You can't handle the power you're given. You can't handle yourself. You're not a good person. Get out of here. The way you treated that kid the other day is not right. We don't need you. And if you had a lot
Exactly.
of cops and it was well funded, you could do that. But instead, we got the unions protecting everyone just like they do in school. That they're protecting the teachers. You got so
That's a
many bad
problem.
teachers, right? And so many bad cops. The few that are bad that are causing the problems with the kids and with the citizens, they're not being reprimanded because they're being protected.
I think you made a very good point there, and I was talking about this with Jackie the other night. That let's be honest, most people go into something like the police department. Of course, they want to serve the community, but they're not coming from a place of just like, oh, self-sacrifice. They want to have a good pension. They want to be able
Sure.
to, they want to have job security, and they want to be able to retire. Like my sister's boyfriend, Jim, who I might have on this thing sometime. He's a retired cop, and they want to be able to get out of there about 55 years old and have a pension that they'll be able to collect till they're 95 years old at 80% of pay or whatever. So really, if there's one thing that is premium in every cop's mind, it isn't punishing random black people, it's preserving that pension. It's
Sure.
making sure that they can go ahead and get their 30 years in or their 25 years in and get a nice big pension and head off to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or Grants Pass, Oregon, or wherever they're going to retire and be able to buy a decent house and go fishing a lot and hang out with their buddies and things like that, and spend time with their grandkids. This idea that anybody is driven into a boring job with a lot of paperwork on the off chance that someday they might have a chance to murder somebody
Mhm.
is insane. If you want to murder somebody, you just go murder somebody. You don't go through the police academy and then play like an angel for a really long time and then spontaneously turn into a murderer because
Right.
my moment has finally arrived. This is what the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's kill somebody.
Right.
It,
She had a
it's
knife. She had a knife. I got to kill somebody. She was carrying a knife. Right.
and if you just like we do here, we try to break it down logically bit by bit. I think that's the strength of this channel. And so you
Yeah.
come to a narrative that's like this, that we go, yeah, okay, that does kind of negate the idea that very many cops anywhere would be actually there to murder.
Right.
It just
Right.
doesn't hold up to logic.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right.
The problem just in the investigation, there's going to be an investigation into it. There's going to be all the paperwork. There's going to be time off. And I can't stress the mentality part of it. I mean, I had a buddy who was in the army and he went to Iraq. He ended up going back as a private security for different generals and whatever. And he showed me some pictures on his laptop and he said, man, this is something that never goes away. This guy was running at us with a machine gun, and we
Wow.
had to put him down, and we did. And I still think about it all the time that I had to do that. And this guy was going to kill them,
Yeah.
right? And it's still in his head. I close my eyes. I see the blood. I see the all the stuff, and and the being scared probably of the guy shooting at them with a machine gun. And the vast majority of people don't want that in their heads.
No.
I watched Daniel Pearl back in the day when Daniel Pearl was beheaded. I felt like I wanted to know what we were up against.
No, I couldn't have watched that.
I watched it, and
Now it's in your head.
it just comes and goes every now and then, and the gurgling, the just
Oh,
I
I
can't
don't even want to
describe
hear a
it. That's
description of it.
exactly right. It was so horrific, and it's something that stays with you. And I'm glad that I watched it because I wanted to know these are the people we were up against, right? We're up against. These are the people
Yeah.
who want to tear down buildings and so on. But the part in my head, and I didn't have anything to do with it. I just watched it for like 20 seconds and then said, okay, that's enough. And yeah, cops don't want to, most of them, and the ones who do, you see a guy who says, man, if you're a cop and another cop goes, you know what? I can't wait for the first bank robber that turns a gun on me. I'm going to blast his face off. You say, well, we got to get this guy out of here. You
Yeah,
can't
this
have
guy
that.
doesn't belong here.
That's right. And that's what we got to let that happen. And I think it's a good point you made about hiring more police officers. That
Yeah.
would give a chance to weed out those bad ones.
Yeah, and it's that much easier for police to show up in force. And I've been in enough situations when I was a young kid driving around in cars with my bros, and we thought we were going to a party where we were going to, walk in there and kind of take the place over. And we found that we were up against incredibly superior numbers of guys who looked like their football team would kick our football team's ass. We behaved ourselves. Whenever
Yeah.
you come and you think that you're in a situation of power when you're with your buddies, and all of a sudden you realize you're not in a situation of power, you back down, you behave yourself a little bit more, and so it's more powerful if 5 squad cars pull up at once and everybody jumps out at the same time than if just one squad car pulls up at once and one of the cops is a woman.
Or the only cop is a woman.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, what are we doing with that? I mean, that's going to, I mean,
Right.
women are so good at so many things, but presenting fearsome authority is not one of the things that they do very well.
Well, I remember you got Facebook jailed for making a comment about a video that was going around. It was like a 10-year-old boy on a bicycle.
That's right. I lost a week of Facebook, right?
And the female cop was like trying to get him off the bike, wanted to say, hey, you can't ride right here or whatever. And the little boy was just like, get off me. And she couldn't do anything with this kid.
Right.
Right. So her only options are less lethal weapons to use
Right.
on this 10-year-old. But do we want that? Or do we want a 250-pound man to say, son, grab him by his shirt collar, say, stop it?
We're putting women in danger if we put them out to be street cops, where they're going to have to sometimes overpower a 19-year-old boy or even a 14-year-old boy,
Right.
like that was. And so, I mean, all this stuff, but again, it comes down to this basic thing that I keep saying is this war on human nature. And that
Right.
is, according to Dr. Peterson or Professor Peterson, however the respectful way of speaking of him is, that comes out of Jacques Derrida and all those people, the early postmodernists, who really do want to break down the understanding of what being a human is, because that's oppression. Logic itself is oppression. All these things they lead to the building of patriarchies. So in other words, we have to dumb ourselves down lest somebody end up more successful than somebody else.
Deny science. We have to deny biology.
Yep.
We have to do all these things to make this work. And don't get me wrong, there are some women police officers that are probably good police officers.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
I've seen some female athletes, because I played college sports. There were some female athletes that were stronger, bigger. They couldn't run faster, but they were bigger and stronger than I was, and they would probably do all right as a cop.
Right.
But some of these people say, hey, and we're not picking on women. There's some male cops that shouldn't be cops either, because they're now 100 pounds overweight. They can't run. They can't do that stuff. There should be a standard. And it doesn't matter if you're a male, a female, or whatever. If you can't reach that standard, you don't need to be a cop.
Right. And, and there are some very strong women, and the strongest woman will beat some men.
That's right.
But the strongest man will beat all women.
Will beat. Oh yeah.
And even a reasonably strong man will beat all women. I am physically intimidated by lots of males, but I've never been. I can't remember being physically intimidated by any woman I've ever known. I've had a few very mad at me, and even a few take a punch at me, but I didn't feel like, oh, this is the day I get beaten to death in my apartment.
Right.
It never occurred to me that I was in mortal danger from a beating from a female. And it's certainly not going to occur to any of these very athletic young inner city kids. I mean, you look at some of these kids, they're carved, and they didn't get that because they spent a lot of time at the gym. They're just very strong specimens.
Right. They're athletic people.
I mean, there's,
about it.
What is it? NBA is 75% black, and that bit of top level athletes came out of only 13% of the population. I believe it's 69% of NFL players
Yeah.
are African American. So, yeah, well, we didn't really drift off this topic too much. I guess that, anything to not talk about COVID, right?
Man, oh, I didn't even think about COVID.
I didn't
Yeah.
either. And
Well,
I'm sorry I brought it up. I only did that because I know we're at the end of our thing, but you got
good.
something else to say about coves?
Let me just say one thing about COVID. With my job, I go into a lot of people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
A month ago, everybody, hold on, let me get my mask. Now they're saying, do I need to wear a mask? Is it okay? Everybody's feeling like it's over. And
Right.
obviously it's not over. But people are less scared about it now. And I think that's a good thing. Um, but ultimately it's going to lead us back to getting the economy going and that kind of stuff. And they still stay their distance. They still do things and they still have a mask and so on. But I'm seeing more people outside going. I saw a guy at the gas station the other day, no, a 7-Eleven. He walked in, no mask, bought his stuff, left. People are kind of, it's run its course in that sense.
I'm that guy. When I go into a convenience store or something like that, I mean, I have this around my neck a lot of times during the day because if somebody, does take offense to me not having a mask, I'm not going to cause a scene in somebody's business,
Right.
because some other one of their customers doesn't like this customer.
Right.
I'm not into doing that. So I carry the thing around with me, and I will put it on if necessary, but I don't pull it up uh, in a convenience store. I will in a supermarket.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it seems like those are all posted on this. They have signs on the windows that are clearly posted, and I don't want to get any business owners in trouble. But so it's the way
Yeah.
I'm wired.
But it's changing. But yeah, we don't want to jump into this because we've already
Well,
talked long enough about
it'll never end.
about one thing, really.
But I think the one thing that we did strike on earlier that does relate to this, it was was Trump with the light turnout at the rally, and I think that that's something that we're going to see for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Particularly music venues will be hit very, very hard because people are just not going to show up. Theaters, I mean, AMC Theater is already theaters. That's the biggest chain, and I believe they filed for bankruptcy or they're teetering on the brink. That's
Yeah.
the biggest theater chain in the country, and they don't know how they're going to survive this because they're not looking at the end of July. Suddenly, it's back to normal. It's going to come back very spotty.
Mhm.
It's going to be a very long time, Jason, I think, before you have to go. You have to get reservations in advance to see a first run movie. Are you
Absolutely.
just going to be able to
That and
show up?
the restaurant too. We bought foods from some restaurant that it's finally opened now, and where they had about 16 tables, I think they were down to 5.
Yes.
And you know what I mean. And there's no way that business can
Right.
stay like that for that much longer. Um, but yeah, it's changing, but it's going to be a long time. And with my job, I'm forced to wear a mask everywhere I go outside my truck. Um,
Well,
so,
you've spoken about fear before.
mhm.
Uh, and it seems like you've got another video coming up about fear. So I don't want to step on anything. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe you already got to that.
I talk about it a lot, so I probably got 5 partially written
It all
videos
runs
about
together for a
it.
while. But fear was the main tool of Nazis in Germany. They
Sure.
found some people to point fear at. Fear is the major tool and has been the major tool of the Democrats to keep people from investigating what Republicans are really about. And it's interesting, you grew up in Kentucky where you naturally interacted with a lot more conservatives.
Mhm.
And I grew up out here where the default setting, you sort of your factory setting is, they pop you out here and you already have the dial is already turned to Democrat.
Mhm.
And unless you, with some effort, turn it away from Democrat to something else, you just die a Democrat. It's your default setting.
Right.
And but it wasn't till I got into the blue collar world and was painting people's homes over and over and over again and seeing how people understood, treated people, seeing how respectfully they were to other people, how much they appreciated my hard work. And over time, I would notice a book on a bookshelf by Rush Limbaugh or this or that, and over time, then I started listening to Dennis Prager, who started out as what he used to call a passionate centrist. And as he made the transition over, I kind of went over with him, but so much of it had to do with meeting some conservatives and just seeing how simple were their values, how straightforward their values were. And every election day, you'd see the Democrats going around trying to get this little group and this little group and this little group. And with conservatives, the same basic 5 values would pop up, right? And it was, I remember saying to my wife back when we were voting for Bill Clinton, I remember saying, you know, it must be so much easier to run because you're just running on these 5 values that everybody already understands than it is to try to keep selling people on all of this little tiny group and this little group and then knit them all together by election day. And now that was the beginning of identity politics was going on back then. And now identity politics has doubled back on itself so many times, and there's so much infighting and backbiting. And now that we have seen, I think I did a video called Why the Left Can't Win, or Why Democrats Can't Win, because at that time I had identified through looking at the polls constantly on Real Clear Politics, I had identified that if you put together the Bernie people and the Liz Warren people, you come up with close to 40% of the electorate. And I thought, they're going to kneecap Bernie Sanders. We just knew that was coming. And in fact, they did. And then put Joe Biden up as, here's the moderate candidate. But that's a rift. And then they pulled it back together with COVID. They pulled everybody back together with COVID, like hate Donald Trump, COVID. Donald Trump did this, COVID, COVID, COVID. So they were getting fear, and they had managed to take the natural fear of Republicans and filter it through this COVID fear and back onto Republicans again.
Right.
But then this split started happening with this leftism thing, and now I think the divide is back. There seems to be and they're not running a left-wing candidate. They are running they know no matter what Joe Biden tries to do by acting woke once in a while, everybody knows that he is an old school Delaware Democrat.
Well, like the Patrice Cullors said from Black Lives Matter, her mission is to get Trump out.
Yes.
And that is, in that world, of course, what it is. But the voters, the normal people that aren't the guys that are going to go and live in Chaz, or aren't going to go, knock down your Foot Locker, like those people are at home going, well, Republicans are evil because I've been told that my whole life, but Joe Biden, what has he done? Yeah, and they're going to stay home. Some of those people are going to stay home.
I think they're going to stay home.
They were believing the Bernies and the Liz Warrens. They were believing, oh, these people want to do something new. This old system isn't really working for me. They're believing something new, which it's not new. It's old is all get out. It's still capitalism, and our Constitution is still the newest way for a country to run. Like, these other systems are older and they're terrible.
Right.
And but they feel that way. And so, yeah, I think that rift is there. I think there's going to be a lot of people not show up for that reason.
I think it could very well go that way. And the other thing is that an awful lot of the people punished hardest by these draconian shutdown of the economy are liberals.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the entrepreneur class, the creatives, the people who, are people think about the movies have all been shut down, and you're not going to be able to snap the movie business back on with like a light switch, because they schedule all those actors and cinematographers and sound people and all of those people. And a lot of those people are blue collar people when it comes right down to it. They're guys like us who show up and pushing those big carts around and running cables, setting up light rigs. They are not the elites. They work in that world, but all those people are out of work and have been for a long time. And if you have a team of people going along and all of us on a film shoot that's scheduled to end in a month, and then all of a sudden you can't end it, you're not going to be able to pull all those people back together because they're going to be on to other movies that they've had scheduled for a year or two. And the same with light people and sound people and all of these directors and sub-directors and art directors and all of this stuff. It's going to be an absolute clusterfuck trying to get the existing half-finished productions finished. Let alone, and all the actors will be a year older. It'll be very strange, but you won't be able to get all those people back together. You're just not going to be able to do it. You got a cast of 20 or 40 people. You can't just expect they're all going to still be available. And so, and if you do keep them available, then other movies have to get canceled. So, and there's going to be a huge resentment that comes up out of this. And a lot of people are just going to say, you know, I don't know, that I don't see Trump having really done this to me. I feel like the governors of my state did this to me. I feel like the mayors did this to me. I think there's got to be a number of people who are pragmatic types. When you look at the production of a movie, and there's a lot of hard work that goes in there. There's a lot of people that aren't the movie stars blowing off their mouth at award shows. There's a lot of real hard-working, seriously committed people working down below, and they're all being punished, and they don't have millions of dollars to carry them through. So I think there's going to be a great deal of resentment in the creative community that we're not seeing yet because they, as you say, they're not going to come out and say anything that could be interpreted as pro-Trump.
Well, they can't, right?
They can't.
Who is that director going to hire, or what crew is he going to hire? He's going to hire that guy that went on Twitter and started spouting off about Trump and saying that, you know, this famous actor is wrong because he says this. No. So yeah, they have to keep their mouth shut. I mean, I got to end with this because I got to go eat lunch, and
you got to get to work.
I got to go to work. The other day, the wife saw a group of people standing with signs supporting the police, and she told me, she said, I would be kind of nervous to go out there because I'm afraid, you know, the Black Lives Matter people are going to come out there and start violence. And I said, that's exactly why they do it the way they do. They don't want you to speak up and say, I support the police. They don't want you to speak up. That's why this guy that's running the cables at the you know, for some movie shoot, that's why he doesn't go talk with anybody there at the thing and say, hey, so what'd you think about Trump's speech he said the other day? No, they talk about superficial stuff. They talk about normal things, acceptable things, and because you have to be quiet. That's what political correctness, that's what cancel culture does to you.
That's right.
You know, and you know, they're trying to cancel Jimmy
again. It's fear. It's fear.
It's fear. It's back. You're exactly right. Fear. I mean, my wife, that's exactly what she was afraid. She said, I wouldn't go out there and stand. I'm afraid. Right. She's going to vote. And I get it. Most people don't want to have a confrontation over who they're going to vote for or some social issue that's going around and so on. They would just rather go about their life, do the stuff they do, enjoy their family, go to work, whatever it might be, make a living, go fishing, whatever it is. They don't want to have to go out there and do that. But there are a lot more people. The silent majority is way bigger than anybody ever gives it credit for.
Right. All right, man. Well, I think that was a good note to end on. Great seeing you again and talking with you. You look healthy.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Look like you're wearing your sunscreen, so you're taking care of yourself.
No more cancer on my face, so that's good.
All right, man. Well, we'll talk soon.
All right, brother. Be good.
Figure a way to shut this off. I'm going to stop the recording now, and goodbye, all good people of the land.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you being out there. With 220 subscribers, something like that now?
Well, 220,000. I think you got to put the 1,000 on there.
Oh, that's different?
Yeah, that's different. 220. Yeah, that's
yeah. 220 subscribers. That'll be when I get my new channel going. That'll be my my account.
That's funny.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later. Take care.
Later, brother.
I'm going to shut the recording off.
Okay.